I rented a remote cabin in the mountains a few nights ago. It was cold, and the snow was piled high. I was a freelance writer looking for inspiration. I wanted peace and quiet away from the city. The tall pines surrounded me, making everything feel both calming and eerie. I thought it would be the perfect place to work. On the second night, I was snuggled under a blanket with my laptop. I was trying to write, but I kept hearing soft tapping on the window. At first, I thought it was just the branches swaying in the wind. I told myself it was nothing. Just a chilly winter night. But as the nights went by, the tapping came back more often. It felt almost desperate now. I also thought I heard laughter, carried on the wind. That sent chills down my spine that I tried to ignore it. I spent hours listening, waiting for the next sound, unsure if I wanted to hear it again. Each time the tapping came, it felt like it was right outside, close enough to make my heart race. One night, I decided to step outside. I needed fresh air, but the snow crunched under my boots like the sound of my anxiety. That's when I noticed something odd. Small footprints led away from the edge of the woods toward my cabin. They were definitely child-sized. My heart began to race. There were no children around. What were those prints doing here? I couldn't tell if I should follow the footprints or turn back. I stood there for a long time, just staring into the dark. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I kept glancing at the woods, half expecting to see something lurking behind the trees. Sometimes I thought I saw shadows moving, but maybe it was just my imagination. The laughter and tapping became distractions I could no longer ignore. By the fifth night, I was feeling more jumpy than ever. I wrapped myself tightly in my blanket, hoping to drown out the noises around me. But then I heard it again. The tapping was louder, more urgent. My palms felt clammy as I tried to focus on calming myself. And then, the tapping stopped. I held my breath, listening. For a moment, there was only silence. Except then, I heard a soft whisper. "Can I come in?" I froze, my heart racing. That voice sounded so close. I turned toward the door, but I didn't see anything on the frosted glass. I hesitated. I was alone, wasn't I? Finally, I walked to the window. I pulled back the curtain. Nothing was out there. Just the deep, endless dark of night. But still, the feeling that something was outside lingered. I couldn't shake it. I felt like I was being watched. It was time to leave, but my feet felt glued to the floor, and maybe it was true. Maybe something was watching me. The next morning, I woke up feeling drained. I hadn't slept well at all, and I felt anxious, like I had been carrying a weight on my chest all night. The cabin felt different today, almost suffocating. I forced myself to get moving, needing to clear my head. As I got ready, I kept glancing out the window, half expecting to see those footprints again. But the snow had fallen overnight, covering everything in a fresh blanket. Perhaps this was a sign I should leave. It felt wrong to stay any longer. I grabbed my things, stuffing them hastily into my bag. Before I could head out, I decided to check on the footprints one last time. I opened the door and stepped outside. The cold hit me instantly, but I pushed forward, scanning the area. Just as I feared, there was no trace of the little footprints. But then something caught my eye. A red ribbon tied to one of the trees near the edge of the woods, fluttering in the wind. My heart raced as I approached it. It was such a strange place for a ribbon. I reached up and carefully tugged at it, feeling that familiar cold knot of dread in my stomach. That's when I saw the tree. It was massive, taller than the others, and its trunk seemed wider. I almost missed it before, but now I noticed carvings on the bark, letters spelled out in jagged lines. A name? I leaned in, brushing away some snow to get a clearer look, and my breath caught in my throat. Anna, the carving read. I felt a shiver run down my spine. My skin crawled as I stepped back, not fully understanding why I was so unsettled. Was it the name? Or the fact that someone had taken the time to carve it here in the woods. I fought the urge to panic. Maybe I could make sense of this. I looked around the grove, feeling more trapped than ever. I had come to the mountains seeking inspiration, but now the place felt like a prison. I turned to leave when I heard it again, a soft laughter, echoing through the trees. I froze, my heart racing. The sound was sweeter this time, like children playing. I strained to listen, thinking maybe I was imagining things. But then, from the direction of the laughter, I saw a flash of movement. Small figures darted between the trees. Panic surged through me that I turned back toward the cabin, every instinct telling me to get indoors. But before I could take a step, I caught a glimmer of something else near the base of the tree, yellow eyes, watching me from the shadows. I stumbled back, breathless. I couldn't stay here. I had to leave. I ran towards the cabin, glancing nervously over my shoulder. Just as I reached for the door, the laughter escalated into haunting echoes, filling the air with chilling delight. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I threw the door open and dashed inside, slamming it shut behind me. That I locked the door, but their laughter continued. It was still out there, but what did it want? I pressed my back against the door, breathing heavily, desperate. And then, everything went quiet. I stood in the silence, every muscle in my body tense. The absence of sound felt wrong, like the calm before a storm. I listened intently, hoping to catch a hint of the laughter again. But nothing came. It was just me and the cold walls of the cabin, and even they felt like they were closing in on me. That I stepped away from the door, my eyes scanning the shadows. The cabin's interior felt suddenly foreign. The flickering light of the lantern did little to chase the darkness away. I needed to think, but my mind raced with the day's events. Anna. The laughter. The eyes. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve. Taking a deep breath, I moved to the small kitchen area. I grabbed a cup and poured myself some hot coffee, hoping it would steady my nerves. I let the warmth seep through my fingers, but the comfort was fleeting. The coffee had a bitter taste that matched my anxiety. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a soft scratch at the door. My heart dropped. I froze, cup halfway to my lips. I couldn't stay here. Not with whatever was outside. The scratching grew louder, accompanied by a soft whisper, almost like a chant. I strained to listen, but the words were unintelligible. Panic clawed at my throat. I dropped the cup and it shattered on the floor, sending coffee splattering everywhere. I had to move. I grabbed my bag and headed for the window. Pulling back the curtain, I peered out into the snow-covered landscape. The red ribbon fluttered in the distance, just visible through the trees. But that wasn't all. Shadows flitted beneath the branches, weaving in and out of the trunks like smoke. I squinted, trying to decipher what I was looking at. Then, I saw them. Small figures, indistinct and shrouded in white, gathered at the base of the massive tree. They stood still, watching. I couldn't see their eyes, but I knew they were looking right at me. The cold feeling in my stomach returned, turning sharper. I recoiled from the window, my breath quickening. I could hardly think. This was no longer about creativity or inspiration, it was survival. I needed to escape. I fumbled with the door, unlocking it quickly and throwing it open. Seizing the moment, I dashed outside, snow crunching loudly under my feet. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I felt the need to get as far away from the cabin and those watchful eyes as possible. As I ran, the soft laughter echoed again, clearer this time. It danced around me in the wind, wrapping itself around my thoughts. I looked back, glancing over my shoulder just in time to see the figures moving toward me, gliding effortlessly over the snow. Desperation surged within me. I sprinted into the trees, branches scratching at my face as I pushed through the underbrush. That laughter twisted deeper in my mind, pulling at me, beckoning me to stay. But I refused. And then, out of nowhere, I tripped over something hidden beneath the snow. I fell hard, gasping as the cold enveloped me. As I struggled to get back up, I felt something brush against my cheek. I froze, my heart pounding once again. "No," I whispered, my voice lost in the sweltering dread. I dared to look to my right, and that S when I saw it, a small glimmer beneath the snow, something half buried, something familiar. I reached out instinctively, feeling ice-cold metal beneath my fingers. That S when I realized what it was. I found the source of their mischief, and my heart plummeted. Whatever lay ahead was worse than I ever imagined. I pulled the object from the snow, my fingers trembling. It was a key, ornate and heavy, glinting in the pale light. A rush of memories flooded back. I had seen this before, the way it hung from Anna's neck, always glimmering even in the dimmest light. But why was it here, buried in the snow, while she was gone? The confusion turned to dread. Before I could process anything further, a cold breeze whipped through the trees, sending shivers down my spine. The laughter echoed again, this time sounding closer, more playful, almost mocking. Panic surged, and I shot to my feet, clutching the key tightly. I didn't want to know what it meant, but I knew I had to get away. That I bolted deeper into the woods, adrenaline fueling my legs. The snow blurred around me, the world narrowing down to the sound of my heartbeat and the crunching ice beneath my boots. The sharp branches seemed to reach out, trying to stop me. I ducked and weaved, desperate to escape, but the laughter didn't stop. It grew louder, circling me like a swarm. I stumbled into a small clearing, the moonlight illuminating the ground. In the center was another tree, its bark twisted and gnarled, unlike the others. I felt drawn to it, the key burning in my hand. That I stepped closer, a strange urge pulling me toward the tree. As I reached out to touch it, the sensation of icy fingers brushed against my arm. I whirled around, but there was nothing there. Just shadows dancing at the edge of the clearing. The weight of the key felt heavier. I had to make a choice. Was this tree somehow connected to Anna? It might lead me to answers, or worse, trap me in whatever game those figures were playing. I glanced back, seeing the edges of the shadows creeping toward me. Their figures moved with unnatural grace, gathering around the perimeter. "What do you want?" My voice broke through the chilling stillness. Silence answered, but I felt the collective gaze of the figures. They were curious, expectant. As I turned back to the tree, I noticed something carved into the bark. It looked like a door, faint but visible. The key pulsed in my hand, begging to be used. With nothing left to lose, I slid the key into the carving, heart racing. It fit perfectly, as if made for this moment. I turned it slowly, the mechanisms clicking within the wood. Yet, the sound was drowned out by the laughter that exploded all around me. The door in the tree cracked open, revealing a darkness I couldn't see through. My breath hitched. I had no idea what lay on the other side, but the laughter wrapped around me, urging me to enter. I stood frozen, paralyzed by uncertainty. Whatever secrets Anna carried, whatever this key unlocked, I was now at the brink of it. Just as the figures began to close in, I took a deep breath. I had to decide: step into the unknown or face whatever was coming for me. Before I could second-guess myself, I stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the darkness. The figures watched, their laughter fading as the door closed behind me. Then, everything went dark. I stumbled forward, caught in the thick darkness. The air felt different, heavier, charged with a strange energy. I could no longer hear the laughter, but I sensed movement all around me, shadows brushing against my skin like whispers. "Hello." My voice felt small and insignificant in the vast emptiness. No answer came. I stood still, straining to see anything, but the darkness was absolute. I was trapped in a void, the key burning weightily in my pocket. I took a cautious step, and the ground beneath my boots crunched softly. The sound startled me, echoing off unseen walls. I shifted my weight, trying to calm my racing heart. It was so quiet, too quiet. Suddenly, I noticed a faint glimmer ahead. I moved toward it carefully, the light growing stronger with every step. It illuminated the space just enough for me to make out wooden beams above me, framing a narrow corridor. Relief washed over me. I wasn't outside anymore. As I reached the end of the corridor, I stepped into what appeared to be a room. It was small, with walls lined with shelves full of dusty books and odd trinkets. On an old table sat a lantern, its flame flickering weakly. I hurried over and lit it, the soft glow pushing back the surrounding darkness. Next to the lantern was something else, a photograph, partially hidden under a stack of papers. I leaned closer. The picture showed Anna standing in front of the tree in the clearing, the very same tree I had just encountered. She was smiling, the key gleaming around her neck. My heart sank. Questions flooded my mind. What was she doing here? Had she been here before? I picked it up, brushing off the dust. But there was something even more concerning beneath the photograph, a small notebook. I opened it, the pages worn and fragile. The handwriting was familiar, and I felt a chill run down my spine as I recognized Anna's style. The entries spoke of strange occurrences, of shadows that watched her, laughter that haunted her steps. My hands trembled as I read her words, "The key is a part of this place. It brings you closer, but it demands something in return. I fear what I've awakened." I looked around, suddenly aware of the weight of the air pressing in on me. Had I awakened something too? I felt the room pulse with an unsettling energy. The shadows seemed to shift. Were they alive, reacting to my presence? Just then, a low whisper drifted from the darkness, barely audible but unmistakable. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice was cold, filled with malice. My breath caught in my throat that I dropped the notebook. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me, an unsettling chorus rising in intensity. I didn't want to stick around to find out who or what was speaking. I needed to escape. That I dashed back toward the corridor, heart racing. The shadows lunged at me, a thick wave of darkness trying to wrap around me. I pushed forward, the flickering lantern barely illuminating my path. Just as I reached the door, I felt a cold hand brush against my arm. Whoever or whatever was in here did not want me to leave. I burst through the door into the narrow corridor and bolted back into the darkness. The laughter returned, sharper and more chaotic. I ran blindly, driven by instinct, the key and anchor in my pocket. And as I fled, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. I sprinted through the corridor, the laughter echoing in my ears like a taunt. The walls pressed in on me, the darkness thickening. I couldn't tell if I was running towards safety or deeper into a trap. The lantern flickered violently, threatening to go out. I couldn't let that happen. As I dashed forward, I realized I had to take a risk. I turned a corner blindly, hoping it would lead me to an exit. Instead, I stumbled into a larger room, dimly lit but with enough light to see a few feet ahead. The air was cooler here, and the laughter faded to a low murmur, but my momentary relief was short-lived. I caught sight of something in the far corner, a figure shrouded in shadow. It stood perfectly still, its outline impossibly dark against the faint light. I froze. Was it watching me? "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice echoing again in the silence. But the figure didn't move. My heart raced faster. I wanted to run, but I needed to know. The key in my pocket felt like it weighed a ton. Suddenly, a low growl broke the silence. It came from the figure, a sound that sent a wave of ice through my veins. Then, without warning, it lunged toward me. I barely had time to react, instincts kicking in as I darted to the side, narrowly avoiding a swift strike. That I stumbled backward, barely keeping my balance. The figure shifted, revealing itself more clearly. It was a person, a woman with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. Her lips moved, forming words, but I couldn't hear them over the sound of my own heartbeat. That I turned to run, but the doorway I had entered through was gone. The walls seemed to close in, leaving me trapped. Panic set in, and the woman's laughter echoed around me, a sinister melody that clawed at my sanity. That I looked around frantically, desperate for an escape. That was when I noticed another glimmer by a bookshelf against the wall. Without a second thought, I raced for it, dodging the woman who had begun to approach. My body screamed in protest, but I couldn't give in. The glow came from another key, similar to the one I had found before. As I reached for it, the woman's hand grabbed my wrist with a grip of ice. "You can't leave," she whispered, her voice sending chills down my spine. That I yanked my arm away, wrenching the key from the shelf. As I clasped it tightly in my hand, the shadows around me writhed, responding to my determination. I had a plan. I turned to face her, the other key now in my possession. "You want it? Take it," I shouted, holding the key up high. The woman hesitated, a look of surprise flickering across her face. And then everything changed. The shadows surged toward the woman, enveloping her as she screamed, disintegrating into the darkness. But they didn't stop there. They turned on me, swirling like a storm. That I rushed back to where the doorway had been, praying it would appear again. The shadows tugged at me, a cold grip wrapping around my legs. But just as it felt like I would be pulled back into the void, the door materialized before me. That I dashed through, slamming it shut behind me. I was breathless, my chest heaving. But outside, the laughter faded into the distance, leaving me in eerie silence. That I stood in the corridor, trembling. My hands shook around the keys, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing upon me. I didn't know what waited ahead, but I sensed the darkness was still close. I had to find Anna, to understand what was truly happening. And that's when I noticed a faint light emerging from an open door down the hallway. It beckoned me closer, but a chilling thought passed through my mind. What if that light held just as many secrets? I took a cautious step toward the door, heart pounding. The light flickered like a distant star, warm and inviting, yet I felt a chill run down my spine. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to find another way. But Anna might be in there, and I couldn't ignore the possibility. I had to know. As I crossed the threshold, the first thing that hit me was the smell like burnt wood and something sweet rotting in the corner. The light brightened as I stepped inside, revealing a small room cluttered with mismatched furniture. An old rocking chair creaked slowly, though there was no breeze. That I glanced around, the hairs on the back of my neck prickling. On the walls hung faded pictures of people I didn't recognize. Their expressions were odd, as if they were aware of something sinister lurking in the shadows. I felt as if they were watching me, judging my every move. Then I noticed a table in the center, covered in what appeared to be old journals and various trinkets. I approached cautiously, my eyes scanning the pages. They were filled with scribbles, frantic notes about the darkness, warnings about the laughter. The words danced in front of my eyes, blending together as a sense of unease washed over me. Suddenly, a sound from behind me made me jump. A soft whisper, like the rustling of leaves, floated through the air. I spun around, expecting to see someone lurking in the darkness. But I was alone. At least, that's what I told myself. That I returned my focus to the canister of journals, refusing to be scared off. One entry caught my eye. It described something called the Keeper, a being that thrived on fear and despair. The more I read, the more I understood. The Keeper was using the darkness to trap people, twisting their minds until they couldn't escape. As I read, I found a name repeated throughout the pages. Anna. My breath caught in my throat. The last entry I could make out was dated just days before I had come to this place. I ran my fingers along the edges of the paper, desperately hoping for more information, but then a yank on my shoulder pulled me back into the moment. I whipped around, heart racing, to find the doorway I had entered slowly closing. My escape route was vanishing. Panic surged through me, and in that moment, I realized I was not alone after all. Something shifted in the shadows, flickering, growing larger. I couldn't make out its form, but I could feel its presence, a weight pressing down on the air. Just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure disappeared. The shadows whispered around me again, taunting, drawing me in closer. Without thinking, I dashed toward the closing doorway, lunging just as it began to shut. I barely made it. My foot caught on the threshold, and I tumbled out, landing hard on the cold floor outside. Breathing heavily, I scrambled to my feet and backed away from the door, the light behind it fading into darkness once more. But in its glow, I had seen something, a glimpse of Anna's face, distorted with fear, that I knew then that I had to confront whatever was lurking behind that door. But as I caught my breath, a creeping dread settled in. I was running out of time. The shadows were still coming, and I had a feeling they were only just getting started. I glanced back at the door, my heart still pounding. Maybe I could go back in. Maybe I could find Anna. But the oppressive chill in the air stopped me. I knew instinctively that whatever was in there didn't want me to return. I turned to survey my surroundings. The narrow hallway stretched before me, dim and uninviting, with only one flickering light bulb illuminating the peeling wallpaper. I could hear the whispering again, calling out from the corners, urging me to come closer. They seemed to echo my name, wash over me like a cold wave. I shivered that I had to move. I stepped cautiously down the hall, trying to shake off the feeling that unseen eyes were tracking my every move. Each step felt like a betrayal, forcing me deeper into the unknown. At the end of the hall, I found another door, this one slightly ajar. The air felt heavier here, as if it held secrets I wasn't ready to uncover. I hesitated, listening intently. For a moment, I thought I heard Anna's voice, faint but clear. "Help," it said, barely above a whisper. The sound pulled me in like a magnet that I pushed the door open gently, bracing for whatever might lie beyond. It creaked loudly, and I winced, glancing over my shoulder as if I might wake something sinister. Inside the room, moonlight shone through dusty windows, illuminating the frayed edges of an old rug. In the center stood a small table, completely bare except for a single candle flickering dangerously low. I approached, scanning the floor for any sign of Anna. My breath caught as I noticed something beneath the table. It was a small locket, glinting under the dim light. I picked it up, fingers trembling. When I opened it, I saw two tiny pictures inside. One was of a little girl with the brightest smile, the other looked like a faded version of Anna. My heart sank as I realized who the girl was, a younger version of Anna, before everything changed. "Anna!" I called out, my voice laced with desperation. Silence answered me. Just then, a sudden draft swept through the room, and I felt the temperature drop instantly. My skin turned prickly as I sensed movement behind me. I swung around, heart racing. The door I had just entered through now stood wide open, but something wasn't right. Shadows flickered and twisted in the doorway. A figure loomed, indistinct at first but then slowly solidifying. It wasn't human, its form weaving like black smoke. Panic clawed at my chest. I stumbled backward, the locket slipping from my fingers and hitting the floor with a dull thud. The shadows coiled around me, drawing closer. Just when I thought I would suffocate in darkness, the figure spoke, its voice a low growl that sent chills through me. "Find her," it said, ominously. "Or be consumed." With that, the shadows surged forward, and I barely had time to react. I dashed for the door, adrenaline pushing me past the looming specter. I didn't stop running until I burst outside, gasping for breath in the cold night air. But the relief was short-lived. A low growl echoed from within the cabin, and I knew the shadows were still pursuing me. Panic surged as I scanned the darkened woods surrounding me. I was all alone, with only whispers in my ears and danger looming behind me. Whatever was in that cabin wouldn't rest until it had what it wanted. And now, I was in a race against time. I sprinted into the woods, the branches clawing at me like the shadows chasing me. My only thought was to put as much distance between myself and the cabin as possible. The darkness enveloped me, thick and suffocating. Each snap of a twig sent jolts of fear down my spine. I could still hear the growled warning echoing in my mind, "Find her, or be consumed." I needed a plan. Was Anna out here too? Or had the darkness taken her? Breathless and shivering, I paused to gather my thoughts. Light filtering through the trees caught my eye. It wasn't as faint as the moonlight. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it seemed to pulse invitingly. Curiosity tugged at me, driving away some of the urgency, and I moved cautiously toward it, the source of the light was a small clearing, where a strange, flickering glow emanated from an old fire pit. It looked abandoned, but the fire hadn't fully died out. Among the burnt logs and cinders, I spotted something glimmering, a metal handle poking out from the ash. I knelt down, digging through the cold remnants of the fire. My heart raced with each movement, half expecting the shadows to creep up on me again. Finally, I unearthed the object, a tarnished metal box, engraved with intricate designs. It felt oddly warm in my palm, despite the chill around me. As I brushed away the ash, I noticed another inscription, faded but still legible, "For the lost, the forgotten." What did that mean? Was Anna lost? Had she been here? The thoughts raced through my mind as I opened the box. Inside lay a collection of small trinkets, broken watches, dried flowers, and what looked like a small lock of hair tied with a ribbon. My stomach churned. Each item held a story, a memory of someone who had once been loved. Suddenly, my heart skipped a beat. Tucked beneath the objects was an old photo. I pulled it out and felt my breath hitch. It was a picture of Anna as a child, with the same bright smile I had seen in the locket. She was holding a teddy bear, one I swore I had seen in the cabin. "Anna!" I shouted, the urgency returning. I could feel the pull of the cabin again, strong and undeniable. Whatever was happening, I couldn't stay here. I needed to head back. Just then, I heard a rustling nearby. I spun around, the photo still clutched in my hand. The shadows expanded in the underbrush, coiling like serpents around the trees. My instincts screamed at me to run, but something else pulled me back toward the noise. Someone was there, I was certain of it. I took a step forward, heart hammering. "Is someone there?" I called out, trying to sound brave. But my voice betrayed me, wavering with fear. Then, from the shadows, a figure stepped into the light. It was a young girl, dirty and shivering, with frightened eyes that mirrored Anna's. "Help me!" She screamed, her voice full of terror, and just like that, everything inside me froze. Because in her eyes, I saw the same darkness that had haunted me in the cabin. Something was wrong. Whatever I thought I was facing, something worse was awakening behind me. The shadows stirred again, whispering, and I realized I was no longer alone. My heart dropped as I took a step back. "Who are you?" I asked, the tremor in my voice growing louder, and then, just as quickly, everything went dark. I stumbled backward, the edges of the clearing swallowed by thick shadows as the girl's form dissolved into darkness. Panic surged through me again, ignited by the whispers growing louder all around. I turned to bolt, but the shadows were closing in, a swirling mass eager to engulf me. "Find her," a voice echoed through the darkness. Was it the same shadowy figure from the cabin, or had I lost my grip on reality altogether? My instincts screamed at me to escape, to flee back into the trees. I sprinted away from the empty clearing, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. The whispers chased me, taunting, filling my mind with confusion and dread. They spoke in hushed tones, weaving in and out of my thoughts a cacophony of voices that seemed to mock me. I glanced over my shoulder and felt my stomach drop. I didn't know where I was running or where I was headed. All I knew was that I had to keep moving. The woods flickered in and out of comprehension, the trees loomed like specters in the darkness. As I navigated through the dense underbrush, I spotted a familiar glow in the distance, a flicker that lured me like a moth to a flame. It was the cabin, standing isolated against the black sky, seemingly untouched by the chaos swirling around me. A chill crept down my spine. Was that my salvation, or a greater trap laid out for me? I hesitated, heart hammering in my chest. What awaited me inside? The memories of laughter echoed in my ears, sweet yet sinister, and I took a deep breath, forcing my legs to carry me toward the cabin. The door creaked open, revealing the inner gloom, and I stepped inside, catching a breath of stale air. Silence draped the room, but it felt alive with anticipation. The lantern I'd left flickered back to life, casting elongated shadows on the walls. "Anna!" I called into the empty space, and my voice echoed back at me, stretched out and warped. There was no answer, but the weight of the silence held many unspoken words. I could feel her presence, yet it was as though she were a ghost slipping through my fingers that I stepped deeper into the cabin, my senses heightened. The fear that gripped me faded into a hollow resolve. I had to find her, had to confront whatever darkness trapped her here. Suddenly, a light flickered in the corner, and my gaze snapped to it. There, against the wooden wall, was the very tree I had found in the clearing, its bark twisted and familiar. My heart raced as I approached, seeing strange symbols carved into the wood. The whispers surged again, a chorus gathering strength. "Help her," they implored, and I realized I stood at the threshold of something ancient, something unfathomable. In that moment, I sensed a connection, a bond not just between Anna and I, but between something larger that lurked beneath the surface. Flexing the keys in my pocket, I fought down my fear. The keys didn't just unlock doors, they were part of this place's history, echoing with lives once lived. If I could find a way to unlock the truth, perhaps I would reach her. In a sudden surge of courage, I retrieved my keys and approached the gnarled tree. I wasn't sure which would fit, but instinct directed my hand to the larger one. As I slid it into a crevice in the bark, a breath filled the space. The wood shimmered, vibrating with potential. I turned the key, and the symbols flared with a sharp glimmer. With a heavy, resonating click, the tree split open like a door, revealing a swirling void. I peered inside, but instead of horror, I saw a familiar figure standing at the edge, a silhouette enveloped in shadows. "Anna!" I cried out, but my voice was swallowed by the linear pull of the darkness. "Help me," she said, her voice fragile and quaking. My heart raced. I had to step in, to cross the threshold beyond the door. "Hold on, I'm coming," I shouted, as I stepped into the waiting abyss. The shadows wrapped around me, yet I pressed on, drawn by hope. There was a faint light ahead, flickering like a distant star, but the darkness hissed, flaring with despair. With every step, I fought against the tendrils that wanted to cling to me. My heart pounding. And then I broke through, tumbling into a small, expansive room illuminated by an ethereal glow. Anna stood before me, looking much like the girl in the photograph. "Anna!" I shouted, reaching out as tears filled my eyes. "It's not over yet," she whispered, her voice barely rising above the heartbeat of the shadows. "They want to keep us here." My chest tightened, realization dawning. Behind her, in the thick shadows, figures began to materialize, faces that twisted in anguish, growling, ever hungry. "Find the key," she urged, glancing to the place where a door once stood. "What? There are so many keys!" I exclaimed, fumbling through my pocket. "They're connected," she said, voice strained. "You have to choose the right one." "But which?" The shadows stirred, an unsettling energy resonating from them. I could sense their growing hunger, their desire to extinguish our hope. That I took a deep breath and narrowed my choices as the voices began to chant frantically. Hands trembling, I reached out for the key I'd found earlier, the ornate one with strange engravings. It felt different, heavier, as if it pulsed with a longing to be used. That I stepped toward the swirling shadows growing dense, and I shouted, "I am not afraid." With determination, I plunged the key into the dark void before us just as the shadows surged closer. The key slid into a slot hidden within the darkness, and suddenly, light erupted, pushing back the shadows like a wave. The figures retreating howled in fury, but I felt Anna's hand grasping mine, and we surged together, free from their grasp. The chaos whirled, turning into a brilliant storm of light and energy, pulling the shadows apart until they dissolved into nothing, and then, quiet returned. We stood panting together in the clearing, the night air crisp around us. "Is it over?" I asked, half expecting something to snatch us back. "I think so," Anna whispered, glancing back at the now dim tree. Yet, uncertainty lingered between us, as if the darkness still loomed just out of sight. "I still don't understand," I said, my words hanging in the air. "What was that all about? Why the laughter? Why the shadows?" "I don't know," she replied, and her innocence mirrored the uncertainty that gnawed at my mind. "But the key, it might still hold answers." I glanced toward the depths of the woods. Would we encounter another shadow, another secret lurking just beyond our understanding? I guess we both have things to figure out, I said, trying to mask the gravity of our situation. Do you want to go back? No, she replied, a flicker of determination lighting her eyes. Let us create our own path. Together, we headed into the darkness, braving whatever the future held, open to the questions that still danced among the trees, waiting just for us.